Once again, Christian greetings to all our valued listeners and viewers throughout the whole world, more particularly to all Shepherd's Rod believers, and most especially to our beloved brothers and sisters in the United States of America. Special greetings to our brethren in Georgia, in Colorado, our brethren in Kansas, in Fiji Island, in Mexico, Spain, in Africa, to the United Kingdom, and also to our brethren in Australia. And to the rest of the 144,000 living saints scattered abroad, greetings. May the good Lord bless you, brothers and sisters. This is our episode number 11 on the subject, the chronological order of events. And still, we will focus our attention to this oncoming year, the year 2021. I do fully believe that such promise in Revelation 1, verse 1, saying, I will show unto thee, which must shortly come to pass. Hereafter is even more definitely applied in our days. More particularly, the year 2021. So here in track number 5, page 32, it says, the statements which must shortly come to pass. Revelation 1, verse 1, and I will show thee things which must be hereafter. Revelation 4, verse 1, go to say that the revelation is given with the one particular object in view, of showing the things lying not behind, but ahead of John's time, with reference being made only incidentally to the past, in order to lay the necessary foundation upon which to build the future. And we already read that the principal reason why Jesus Christ followed such particular rule, 3 hours schedule, is to present to his church the exact time of her history by periods. 2SR 237. The reason he has followed that particular rule is to present to his church the exact time of her history by periods. So the exact time. And we already proven with absolute fact that the church mentioned there is the 11th hour church. Because according to SR 234, saying, but the object of the lesson is for the latter who are hired at the 11th hour. For the truth of the parable has never been understood by any other company. So, whatever the truth involved therein, in the parable in Matthew 20, the particular object in view has never been understood by any other company, pointing to the 4 companies prior to the 11th hour. It was not understood by the first call. It was not understood by the second call. It was not understood by the third call. It was not understood by the fourth call, but only to the last call, the 5th, those that had been called at the 11th hour, due to the fact that only to them Jesus Christ present to them the truth concerning the parable in Matthew 20. But such parable in Matthew 20 can never be understood unless it will be connected to the symbolization in Revelation 6 verse 6, according to 2SR 225 and 226, saying, with the previous explanation of Revelation 6 verse 6, a measure of wheat for a penny and 3 measures of barley for a penny, we shall endeavor to prove that the symbols point back to the parable of the householder. And Jesus allegorically looked forward to John's vision. If the explanation perfectly fits the parable and the vision in harmony with God's book and law, and a present truth lesson is derived therefrom, then only must we accept it as truth. So, such divine explanation will always perfectly fits the parable. Not only the parable, but as well as the vision of John in Revelation chapter 6, verse 6, by which such revelation is in perfect harmony with God's book and law, and also a steering present truth lesson. Now, focusing for a while, the vision of John in Revelation 6, verse 6. Now let us read 2SR page 222. In our study of the 7 seals, we reserve for future explanation of the following scripture. And I heard a voice in the midst of the 4 beasts say, a measure of wheat for a penny, and 3 measures of barley for a penny. Revelation chapter 6, verse 6. Again, we turn the reader's attention to the fact that the voice came from the throne. See chapter 5, verse 11. Therefore, the price of the cereals is fixed by the great judge. There must be something of great importance in these symbols, for the great Jehovah himself is is speaking. Now, brothers and sisters, we know that Revelation chapter 6, verse 6 is the last verse that describes the third seal. Here in 2SR on page 208, it says, the third seal, black horse. Why is it that the parable in Matthew 20 is attached or connects to the vision of John on Revelation 6, verse 6? There must be an accurate significance. Now, in studying the subject of the seven seals, let us distinctly separate the groundwork, because the groundwork occurs on the earth, but the particular object in view is in the heavenly sanctuary. And that is stated on track number 5, page 34, saying, in the main, however, the trumpets and the seals portray an event which is future from John's time and which takes place in heaven. So the particular object in view, the main prophetic event, both the subject of the trumpets and the seals, it takes place in heaven. Although it also portrays kindred events and also related events, by which some are contributory and some are consequent to the main prophetic event, according to that reading in track number 5, page 34. Now, let us focus again to our attention on Revelation chapter 6, verse 6. Now, to repeat again, Revelation 6, verse 6 is the last verse that describes the third seal. The third seal contains 2 verses. Revelation chapter 6, verse 5 and Revelation chapter 6, verse 6. Now, to repeat again, we need to grasp the true significance, the principal reason why the parable in Matthew 20 is attached to the vision of John on the subject of the 7 seals, but particularly to the third seal and the last verse that describe the third seal. Now in 2SR 210 it says, "Heart not the oil and the wine." So one of the message written in Revelation 6 verse 6 is, do not hurt the oil and do not hurt the wine. Now let us read the statement given here. 2SR 210, verse 6. And I heard a voice in the midst of the four beasts say, and said, thou art not the oil and the wine. According to Revelation 4 verse 6, the four beasts are round about the throne. Therefore, the throne is in the midst of the beast. So, the throne is in the midst of the beast. Says John, and I heard a voice in the midst of the four beasts. One of the things he heard was, see thou art not the oil and the wine. Therefore, whatever is meant by the symbol, it is not of men, but of God. For it was he who commanded, hurt not the oil and the wine. It is an accepted fact by nearly all Bible students that oil is used by the scriptures as a symbol of the Holy Spirit, as in Psalms 45 verse 7, Isaiah 61 verse 1 to 3, Zechariah 4 verse 12. Wine is used as a symbol of the blood of Christ. And as the life is in the blood, the wine denotes life eternal, found only in the Lamb of God, which taketh away the sins of the world. Say Jesus, the words that I spake unto you, they are spirit and they are life. Oil and wine. The words in the Bible are the spirit and the life. Therefore, the command, hurt not the oil and the wine, has reference to the Bible, the spirit and the life. So, oil represent the Old Testament and wine represent the New Testament. Why is it that there is a divine command or decree not to hurt the oil and the wine? In what way that we could hurt the Bible? We could hurt the oil. We could hurt the wine. In what way? And what will happen to those people that will hurt the oil and the wine? And also, why is it that such divine command, hurt not the oil and the wine, is attached to the third seal, not to the first seal, not to the second seal, not to the fourth seal, not to the fifth seal, not to the sixth seal, nor on the seventh seal, but rather it was attached to the third seal. Why? Whatever the particular object in view, it must be in harmony with the parable in Matthew 20. There must be a close connection with the parable in Matthew 20, as stated in 2SR 225 and 226. Now, I would like to read this statement, and I do fully believe that this statement is also related to our subject, because it is also pertaining to the Bible. Now, I would like to read 2TG number 15, page 10. 2TG number 15, page 10. Revelation 11, verse 5. And if any man will hurt them, the pronoun them is pointing to the two olive trees, which is also represented by the Bible. And if any man will hurt them, fire proceeded out of their mouth and devoured their enemies. And if any man will hurt them, he must in this manner be killed. Then it says, from this we see that though the Bible is the best friend to its friends, it is a terrible enemy to its enemies. When truth cannot save, it kills. And here's another statement, which I also fully believe that closely connected to our subject is found on track number 5, page 72. Track number 5, page 72. But I would like to read first track number 5, page 70. It says, in the blazing light of this symbol, intensifying the illumination from the whole series of symbols, of which it is a part and which no human mind could either have devised or thus rightly interpreted, Christ is clearly seen to be King of His people in both the Old and the New Testament periods, and author of the scriptures in both the Hebrew and the Greek. And from this fact, it follows that as He is the Word, the Bible in human form, His Hebrew name, Abaddon, is also the name of the Old Testament scriptures, and His Greek name, Apollyon, is also the name of the New Testament scriptures. Or in other words, in the Bible has different symbolization. On Revelation 6, verse 5 and 6, the Bible, the Old Testament represent the oil, and the New Testament represented by the wine. But in the subject of the trumpet study, the Bible is represented by the Old Testament, Abaddon, and the New Testament, Apollyon. But on Revelation 11, verse 5, the Bible is represented by the two olive trees. But in Isaiah 7, verse 21 and 22, the Bible is represented by the two sheep. Represented by the two ships. Now let us read track number 5, page 72. It says, to those, therefore, who accept Christ as their King, He is a Savior. While to those who refuse to have Him rule over them, Luke 19:14, He is a destroyer. Hence, accordingly, the curses or judgments fall as the trumpets reveal upon those who reject the teachings and the authority of the Bible, and who as a result do not have the seal. These solemn facts gravely admonish us not to forget the Bible's warning that our treatment of it will bring one of two results: death or life. Track number 5, page 72. So, in this reading, the enemies of Christ in Luke 19 verse 27 are those who refuse to submit themselves to the one whom Jesus Christ appointed to reign in his stead. And accordingly, in for Symbolic Code 10 to 12, page 7, for Symbolic Code 10 to 12, page 7, therefore, because of their insubordination, Jesus has plainly told that at his appearing, he shall command his servants, saying, but those mine enemies, which would not that I should reign over them, bring hither and slay them before me. Luke 19 verse 27. The parable makes it clear that through some men, Jesus is to reign before his appearing, and that those who refuse to submit themselves to the one whom Jesus has chosen to represent him shall lose out eternally. Or in other words, brothers and sisters, whoever that man represented by antitypical David and track number 8, page 71, saying that we will not have this man to reign over us, although this man, as we now see, is the antitypical David, the simple means the visible king. Track number 8, page 71. But, brothers and sisters, it is best understood that to recognize that man appointed by Jesus Christ to reign in his stead was illustrated by antitypical Ezekiel, by which we read several times in track number 1, page 29 and page 30, that God gave the book to Ezekiel to eat that book, and that book is none other than the Bible. And we already read that the Bible contains the complete formula of the plan of salvation. 1 TG number 10, page 18. So, I would like to remind again that Revelation 6 verse 6, the only chapter and the only verse that can represent the Bible. Chapter 6 and verse 6, meaning the 66 books of the Bible. So, the statement given in the shepherd's rod in 2SR 222, saying that there must be something of great importance in these symbols, for the great Jehovah himself is speaking. So, whatever that words by which God the Father is speaking, that is the unfoldment of the complete plan of redemption. Brothers and sisters, so we need to study closely the symbolization of Revelation 6 verse 6, because the shepherds declared clearly that if the explanation perfectly fits the parable and the vision in Revelation 6 verse 6, by which there is something greater importance of this symbolization in Revelation 6 verse 5 and 6, because in such symbolization God the Father Himself is speaking. According to this reading in 2SR page 222. Now, first of all, the statement declared clearly that, saying, 2SR 222, again we turn the reader's attention to the fact that the voice came from the throne. See chapter 5, verse 11. What is the throne? Or where is that throne mentioned in chapter 5, verse 11, as stated by the shepherd's rod? Now, it says here in track number 8, you can read from page 3, 4, 5, and 6. It is entitled, Mount Zion at the 11th hour. Then the quotation is Isaiah 62, verse 1 to 3, Revelation 1, verse 1, Revelation 14, verse 1 to 3, Revelation 4, verse 1, 4, and 6, then Revelation 5, verse 8, verse 11, and verse 12. But our particular object in view is Revelation 5, verse 11, as quoted in 2SR 222. Now, this is the statement given by the shepherd's rod. It says, track number 8, page 5. It says, the 7 lamps, verse 5, being part of the sanctuary fixtures, gives conclusive evidence that the heavenly throne scene occurs in the sanctuary, whereas the subsequent Zion scene takes place upon Mount Zion, the king's earthly palace grounds, not upon Mount Moriah, the sanctuary grounds, where it would necessarily have to take place, where it to denote that the event occurs in the sanctuary. These scenes, therefore, are of two different events in two different locations. The sitting of the throne in heaven and the standing of the redeemed with the Lamb on earth, while the activities embraced in the throne scene are still in progress. So this reading, brothers and sisters, we need to distinctly and carefully differentiate according to track number 8, page 5. It says, so, correctly to understand this prophetic event in its entirety, we must carefully differentiate the part which takes place in heaven from the part which takes place on earth. But even to the part which takes place in heaven, we need also to carefully differentiate the part that takes place in the sanctuary, and which is represented by Mount Moriah, and the part which takes place on Mount Zion, which is the palace grounds. And the shepherd's rod made it so plain that these two are different locations. Now let us focus first Revelation 5 verse 11, that is sanctuary grounds. The throne in the sanctuary. Now let us read track number 3. Track number 3 on page 16 and page 17. Both John's and Daniel's visions reveal that the throne in the sanctuary was not there from the beginning of the creation of God, or from the days of Moses, or yet from the hour that Christ ascended on high, or even from the days of pagan Rome, that indeed it was not set up until after the fall of pagan Rome, when the little horn of the nondescript beast came up in the days of ecclesiastical Rome. Track number 3, page 16 and 17. If you will look at the statement, brothers and sisters, the particular object in view is not the judgment that pertains to the dead. Because we are talking about the throne in the most holy place. And I think I will no longer elaborate more because it is common and more basic that the throne in the most holy place were set up in October 22, 1844. October 22, 1844. But the statement, it says, when does the throne in the most holy place are set up? It says, in the days of ecclesiastical Rome. We know that the days of ecclesiastical Rome is from 538 to 1798. That is the 1,260 years. That is the reign of papal supremacy. But 1844 is no longer the days of ecclesiastical Rome. That even the little horned head at that time was not as yet healed, because it was healed on February 11, 1929. And we know that grammatically, the statement in the days of ecclesiastical Rome, brothers and sisters, it must be within the period of time when the little horn is reigning. And brothers and sisters, that is from 538 to 1798 AD. But that is pointing to the last period of the exceeding great horn. The last period of the exceeding great horn, by which we are now studying. Now, I would like to read to you track number 6 on page 55 and page 56. Track number 6, pages 55 and page 56. It says, the scriptures make clear that while in the sanctuary, so that is in the sanctuary, Christ receives the kingdom. So while Jesus Christ is in the sanctuary, Christ receives the kingdom after the thrones are cast down. It did not say after the thrones were cast down as inscribed in past tense, but rather inscribed in present tense. Presently cast down, or meaning the very moment that it is placed in the sanctuary, the very moment by which the thrones are set up in the sanctuary, that is the time by which Christ receives the kingdom. What does it mean by receives the kingdom? And then it says, and after the investigative judgment is completed, before His second coming. that this is so is further evidenced by the parable of Luke 19:15, which states that Christ receives the kingdom and that afterwards He comes to slay His enemies. Now, brothers and sisters, the second coming mentioned here could not be the second visible coming, because this second coming is the coming of Christ illustrated in the parable in Luke 19:15. And for sure, every Davidian knew that Luke 19:15 does not refer to the world, but to the church. So according to this reading in tract number 6, page 55 and page 56, Luke 19:15 is Christ's second invisible coming. And that Christ's second invisible coming, brothers and sisters, will be after Jesus Christ receives the kingdom. After Jesus Christ receives the kingdom given to Him by His Father. And that kingdom that Jesus Christ will receive is after the thrones are cast down. Where? After the thrones are set up in the sanctuary. But when does that thrones will be set up in the sanctuary? He says, after the investigative judgment is completed. And since it is still provisionary time, the investigative judgment mentioned here, which is at the time when the investigative judgment is completed, it did not say after the investigative judgment was completed, but rather after the investigative judgment is completed, meaning just presently finished. Then, after that, the next event is that the thrones are set up. The thrones are cast down. Therefore, since the thrones are cast down in the sanctuary, brothers and sisters, then that is still provisionary time. And for sure, the thrones that are cast down after the investigative judgment is completed is pointing to the judgment that pertains to the living, by which at that time, immediately after the thrones are cast down, God the Father is speaking according to the voice of inspiration, brothers and sisters. And that is why we need to study closely this very important event. Now, brothers and sisters, I would like to read another statement in here in 1 TG. We already read, brethren, several times that since the shepherd's rod in tract number 8, page 3, 4, and 5, entitled Mount Zion at the 11th hour, the verses are grouped together. Isaiah 62 verse 1 to 3, Revelation 1 verse 1, Revelation 14 verses 1 to 3, Revelation 4 verse 1 to 4 and 6, then Revelation 5 verse 8, then verse 5 and verse 11. So Revelation 5 verse 11 is included in that main subject Mount Zion at the 11th hour. Mount Zion at the 11th hour. Now remember, I would like to read to you 2SR. Let us read first Revelation 14. 2SR page 172. It says, 2SR page 172. And I heard a voice from heaven as the voice of many waters, and as the voice of a great thunder. And I heard the voice of harpers, harping with their harps. And they sang as it were a new song before the throne, and before the four beasts and the elders. And no man could learn that song but the 144,000 which were redeemed from the earth. Revelation 14 verse 2 and 3. The song was sung in heaven by heavenly beings before the throne and before the beast and the elders. Therefore, it is evident that the judgment was in progress. Note that the 144,000 did not sing, but they only could learn the song as it was sung in heaven. That is, they alone understood the heavenly truth in that particular time and their position in connection with the message they must bear. Now, do not forget the statement in track number 8, page 5 and page 6. Mount Zion and Mount Moriah are two different locations, different settings, and different periods of time. Revelation 14, verse 2 and 3. Brothers and sisters, according to this reading, and I heard a voice from heaven as the voice of many waters, and as the voice of a great thunder. And I heard the voice of harpers harping with their harps. And they sang as it were a new song before the throne and before the four beasts and the elders. And no man could learn that song but the 144,000 which were redeemed from the earth. Revelation 14 verse 2 and 3. The question is that Revelation 14 verse 2 and 3, where is the place by which, brothers and sisters, these heavenly beings are singing the song, singing the new song? It says, before the throne and before the four beasts and the elders, and no man could learn that song. Now, without the shepherd's rod, brothers and sisters, maybe you will immediately jump to the conclusion that verse 2 and 3, they were singing in Mount Zion because of verse 1. Now let us read, brothers and sisters, early writings. Early writings on page 38. Early writings, page 38. It says, I saw four angels do not forget, our attention is focused on Revelation 14, verse 2 and verse 3. It is in that chapter by which you can read the statement, they followed the Lamb whithersoever he goeth. Now, the important question is that, is Revelation 14, verse 2 and 3, when these heavenly beings are singing the new song, where is that place? Is it in the sanctuary? Or is it on the palace grounds? Brothers and sisters. On verse 1, it says, Revelation 14, verse 1, and I looked, and lo, a lamb stood on the Mount Zion, and with him 144,000, having his father's name written in their foreheads, which will be fulfilled first. Revelation 14, verse 1. The occurrence on earth or the occurrence in heaven. So, or does the occurrence on earth and the occurrence in heaven fulfill the same period of time? And next, verse 2 and verse 3, when the heavenly beings are singing the song, where is that place by which they were singing the song? On verse 3, it says, and they sang as it were a new song before the throne and before the four beasts and the elders. No man could learn that song but the 144,000 which were redeemed from the earth. Where is the place by which these heavenly beings are singing the song? A new song. It is before the throne and before the beast, or before the four beasts and before the 24 elders. Revelation 14, verse 3. Now let us read early writings, page 38. Early writings, page 38. I saw four angels who had a work to do on the earth, and were on their way to accomplish it. Jesus was clothed with priestly garments. He gazed in pity on the remnant, then raised his hands, and with a voice of deep pity cried, my blood, Father, my blood, my blood, my blood. Then I saw an exceeding bright light come from God, who sat upon the great white throne, and was shed all about Jesus. Then I saw an angel with a commission from Jesus, swiftly flying to the four angels who had a work to do on the earth, and waving something up and down in his hand, and crying with a loud voice, hold, 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 until the servants of God are sealed in their foreheads. I asked my accompanying angel the meaning of what I heard, and what the four angels were about to do. He said to me that it was God that restrained the powers, and that he gave his angels charge over things on the earth. That the four angels had power from God to hold the four winds, and that they were about to let them go, while their hands were loosening, and the four winds were about to blow. The merciful eye of Jesus gazed on the remnant that were not sealed, and he raised his hands to the Father and pleaded with him that he had spilled his blood for them. Then another angel was commissioned to fly swiftly to the 4 angels and bid them hold until the servants of God were sealed with the seal of the living God in their foreheads. First of all, the vision is pointing to the time when God the Father is sitting on the great white throne. That is very plain in this reading. It says, who sat upon the great white throne. Now, where does the great white throne is located? This vision of Sister White is in a period of time by which the 144,000 is already called the remnant. Why is it that they are called the remnant? In spite of the fact by which at that time they were not as yet sealed. So, we explained it several times that according to 1SR page 102, it says, the definition of remnant is that which is left after the separation, removal, or destruction of a part. That is the only definition of remnant. It is after such removal, after such separation, or after such destruction. But this vision cannot be destruction because the 144,000 at this time are not yet sealed. So, there is no other, brothers and sisters, that can answer that question except in 1 TG number 638. By which the shepherd's rod declared clearly, it says, it is obvious that they escaped the destruction of these sinners in the church. What destruction? The destruction of the sinners in the church. Who are they that escape such destruction? It says, only the holy ones, those whose names are left written in the book, escape the destruction that falls upon the wicked in the church. Only they constitute the remnant, the ones that are left. Why is it that they are called remnant? Because they are the only ones that had been left written in the Lamb's book of life after all the sinners, after all the unworthy names had been blotted out. But according to the vision, at that time, the remnant, those names that had been left written in the Lamb's book of life, are not yet sealed. They have not as yet received the seal of protection. So Jesus Christ pleaded, bringing the names of the 144,000, the names that had been left written in the Lamb's book of life. And where is the place by which God the Father is sitting, by which Jesus Christ is pleading to God the Father? It is on the great white throne. God the Father is sitting on the great white throne. Now, where we could find in the Bible great white throne? That is found in Revelation chapter 20. Here in Revelation chapter 20, on verse 11, it says, and I saw a great white throne, and him that sat on it, from whose face the earth and the heaven fled away, and there was found no place for them. Revelation 20 verse 11. But Sister White made it so plain that the one sitting on the great white throne is God the Father. Early Writings, page 38. Now let us read track number 15. It says here, and track number 15. Page 23. Track number 15, page 23. Moreover, as there is but one judicial sitting during the millennium, the thrones of verse 4 must be in session. It says, jointly with the great white throne. It says, jointly with the great white throne. Now, that great white throne, brothers and sisters, according to the shepherd's rod, it says, there is no beast and there is no 24 elders. Please look at it, I forget that. On this throne, it says, there is no beast and there is no 24 elders. I think still track number 15. Let me see. You find it? Now, I would like to look at brothers and sisters. I would like to emphasize that great white throne, I would like to read first 2 TG number 12. Number 12, page 29. Now, let me read to you. Track 15 on page 18. It says, the third session, the one during the 1,000 years, is at the great white throne. Revelation 20 verse 11 to 12. The throne of him from whose face the earth and the heaven flee away. At this latter throne, there is no sea of glass, no beast, no lion, no lamb, and although there are lesser thrones. Revelation 20 verse 4. Inspiration does not flatly say who sits on them. But the most important part that I would like to emphasize in track 15, page 18. On the great white throne, there is no beast, there is no elders. Therefore, Revelation 14, verse 2 and 3, when the heavenly beings are singing a new song, before the throne, before the 4 beasts, before the 24 elders, cannot be the great white throne. Because in the great white throne, there are no beasts and there are no 24 elders. Now, that great white throne cannot be on the sanctuary, because in the sanctuary, there are 4 beasts and there are 24 elders. It cannot be in the sanctuary, because in that throne, there is no beast and there is no elders. Track 15, page 18. Now let us read 2 TG number 12, page 29. It says, the revelation, moreover, in the following verses, again and again endeavors to make us see that the event there portrayed is the judgment in session. Fear God and give glory to Him, for the hour of His judgment is come. That is Revelation 14, verse 6 and 7, or verse 6 or verse 7. Then it says, and I saw thrones. John declares, and judgment was given unto them. What is the description given by the shepherd's rod? Revelation 20 verse 4. Lesser thrones. Right? According to track 15 verse 18, page 18, track 15 page 18, it says, and although there are lesser thrones, Revelation 20 verse 4, I would like to read again. Track 15 page 18. And although there are lesser thrones, Revelation 20 verse 4, inspiration does not flatly say who sits on them. It was inscribed in plural form, but inspiration does not flatly say how many thrones, and inspiration does not flatly say who are they sitting on that thrones. But here the statement very plain that these thrones in Revelation 20 verse 4 are set up, brothers and sisters, during provisionary time, because it says, fear God and give glory to Him. Indicates provisionary time. And then it says, John truly paid it as a prophecy. But when it actually takes place, then God's agency on earth, the spirit of prophecy in the church, is to proclaim that the event has actually taken place. Brothers and sisters, this is very plain here in 2 Tg 12:29. We know that the spirit of prophecy in the church, that is the prophetic gift. He will be the one to proclaim that the event has actually taken place. What event? Revelation 20 verse 4. Brothers and sisters, let us distinctly separate the thrones that were cast down in October 22, 1844 in the most holy place. That is the thrones in Daniel 7 verse 9 and 10, which is directly applied to the judgment that pertains to the dead. But Revelation 20 verse 4, the thrones mentioned there are the thrones, indicates when that thrones are cast down, indicates that the judgment that pertains to the living commence, and it is in progress. Now, I would like to read first tract number 3. It says here, tract number 3, page 49. Let's read. This work of separation or cleansing brought to view in the parable of Matthew 13 verse 30. And again, in that of Matthew 13 verse 47 and 49. Also in the prophecy of Malachi 3, 1 verse 1 to 3. And in that of Ezekiel 9, as well as in Revelation 14, is directly applicable to the judgment day for the living. So talking about Matthew 13:30, Matthew 13:47 to 49, Malachi 3:1 to 3, and Ezekiel chapter 9 and Revelation 14 is directly applicable to the judgment day for the living. But the cleansing of the sanctuary at the end of the 2,300 days, according to Daniel 8 verse 14 and Daniel 7 verse 9 to 10, applies directly to the judgment among the dead. So the thrones that were cast down in October 22, 1844, as also stated in the Great Controversy 479, is the vision of Daniel. Daniel chapter 7, verse 9 and 10, which is directly applied to the judgment that pertains to the dead. Brothers and sisters, but the judgment that pertains to the living, it must be the thrones in the book of Revelation. And we already read in 2TG 12:29 that the thrones mentioned is found in Revelation 20 verse 4. And the shepherds had called it lesser thrones. Now, let us read the Bible, Revelation 20 and verse 4. It says, "And I saw thrones, and they sat upon them, and judgment was given unto them. And I saw the souls of them that were beheaded for the witness of Jesus, and for the word of God, and which had not worshipped the beast, neither his image, neither had received his mark upon their foreheads, or in their hands, and they live and reign with Christ 1,000 years. Revelation 20 verse 4. Now, do not forget the statement in 2TG 12:29. It is attached to the message, "Fear God and give glory to Him, for the hour of His judgment is come." And then connect Revelation 20 verse 4, not Daniel 7. And it is called lesser thrones. Brothers and sisters, therefore, we can easily understand that the thrones mentioned in tract number 6, let's read again. Tract number 6 in page 55 and page 56. The scriptures make clear that while in the sanctuary, Christ receives the kingdom after the thrones are cast down and after the investigative judgment is completed before His second coming. So let us enumerate one by one. Brothers and sisters, the statement here in tract number 6, page 55 and page 56. It says, when Jesus Christ receives the kingdom, Jesus Christ is still in the sanctuary. And Jesus Christ receives the kingdom after the thrones are cast down. And Jesus Christ receives the kingdom, or the thrones are cast down after the investigative judgment is completed, before His second coming. What second coming? Second invisible coming. Now, brothers and sisters, I would like to read to you the continuation of the reading in tract number 3, page 49 and page 50. And tract number 3, page 49 and page 50, it says, "Though the cleansing of the sanctuary, as has already been seen from Daniel's prophecies, was to take place after 1844 AD, it is pointing to the last and the final day of atonement when the sanctuary is cleansed. Not in the time when the sanctuary is, brothers and sisters, is still in progress. So it says, though the cleansing of the sanctuary, as has already been seen from Daniel's prophecies, was to take place after 1844 AD, yet, since the living righteous, brothers and sisters, the living righteous is the 144,000 living saints that will no longer to taste death. Therefore, it did not say when would it be, but only the Shepherd's Rod says after 1844 AD. But it did not say for how long from 1844, but for sure it says after 1844. By which at that time, the 144,000 living saints are already in existence. It says, yet since the living righteous are still commingled with the sinners in the church. Now, it points out to the time when the living righteous are still commingled in the church. So what does it mean when the living righteous are still commingled in the church? I would like to read to you first, track number 8. Then we will go back to this reading. In track number 8, on page maybe track number 15 first. Track 15, page 61. Track number 15 on page 61. It says, seeing, track 15:61, seeing that the 144,000, the servants of God, are not as yet sealed, not yet enclosed, protected, guarded, and ready to take their stand with the Lamb on Mount Zion, but rather are still commingled with the tares. The angels are commanded to forestall the clash. Who commanded? Let us connect the vision of Sister White. In Early Writings, page 38. In Early Writings, page 38, when does Jesus Christ pleaded to God the Father? After all the names of the wicked among the congregation of the living are completely blotted out, and the only names that remain in the Lamb's Book of Life is the 144,000 living saints. They are called the remnant. Why? Because their names had been left written in the Lamb's Book of Life. And then Jesus Christ brought their names into the presence of God the Father. Where? On the great white throne. Jesus Christ is pleading according to the vision of Sister White. What is the pleading of Jesus Christ? That God the Father will grant him to give another chance to hold the four winds. Because the 144,000 are not yet sealed. The same with this statement. In track 15, page 61, seeing that the 144,000, the servants of God, are not as yet sealed, not yet enclosed, protected, guarded, and ready to take their stand with the Lamb on Mount Zion, but rather are still commingled with the tares. The angels are commanded to forestall the clash. So this reading can be easily understood that the 144,000 cannot receive the seal of protection unless they will be separated from the tares. Now, I would like to read the old symbolic code. It says here, to symbolic code number 1, page 6. To symbolic code number 1, page 6. The above quotation needs no interpretation, as does early writings, page 71. It is definite that before God's people receive the seal, they must separate themselves from sin and sinners. Why is it that sinners is inscribed in plural form, but sin is inscribed in singular form? Because the specific sin mentioned here is the sin against the Holy Ghost, rejecting present truth. God cannot place His seal up to the 144,000 while they were still commingled with the tares. Who are they, the tares? Let us read. Answerer number 2. On page 47. Flood and tares are figurative equivalents. Answerer number 2, page 47. Flood and tares are figurative equivalents. To understand the tares is to understand the dragon's flood, because they are figurative equivalents. Now let us read 2 TG 24:24. Finally, what could be the dragon's flood that proceeds out of his mouth, if not dragon prompted interpreters of the scriptures, through whom he expects to cause the church to be carried away? Truly, the self-appointed prophets in Israel of today are more in number than were the prophets in Elijah's day. Here is a fact which only deaf and blind persons would try to deny. No, I am not taking pleasure in unveiling this truth. I do it only because I must. God wants His people to have the truth, and so I have no alternative but to tell it. This flood against which the ever-living church is struggling to make headway is, we are told, to be swallowed by the earth. It is to be done away with as were the self-appointed prophets in Moses' day, namely Korah, Dathan, and Abiram, princes of the assembly, famous in the congregation, men of renown. Numbers 16 verse 2. This and all their followers and sympathizers perish. So here, brothers and sisters, we can easily see that the same divine command given by God in the days of Moses, saying, depart from the congregation. Let us read Numbers. Let me see if I could find that specific verse. I think Numbers 16. Let's read. Numbers 16 on verse 26. It says, and he spake unto the congregation, saying, depart, I pray you, from the tents of these wicked men, and touch nothing of theirs, lest ye be consumed in all their sins. In verse 21, it says, separate yourselves from among this congregation, that I may consume them in a moment. Number 16:21. And 26. Separate and depart, brothers and sisters. So, the shepherd's rods declared clearly that in 2TG, that the word sealed means placed in a safe place, sealed. 2TG 44:34. It says, the word sealed means placed in a safe place, sealed. This is exactly what the Apostle Peter says in 1 Peter 4:17 and 18. 2TG 44:34. The word sealed means placed in a safe place. And there are only two safe places mentioned in the shepherd's rod: the bezels and the barn. Track number 8, page 92. That is the barn and by bezels. It says, a new place, safe and clean, where henceforth there shall no more come the uncircumcised and the unclean. Isaiah 52 verse 1. Track number 8, page 92. Why is it vessels in plural form? Because it was illustrated that the 144,000 brothers and sisters, it seems that they had been scattered throughout the whole world without a shepherd. Right? We read that several times in 1 SR 222. It says, though such great apostasy and blasphemy has grieved the world, God's church, 144,000 in number, is scattered throughout the length and breadth of the earth without a shepherd, have not bowed a knee to Baal. That is the description of the 144,000. Although they have been scattered, it seems that they have no shepherd, but they were protected and guarded. But God cannot protect them. God cannot give them seal of protection if they were still commingled with the tares. Who are the tares? This uninspired leadership. Dragon-prompted interpreters. According to 2TG 24:24. Now, let us go back again to track number 3. I would like to read track number 3 on page 49 and page 50. It says, yet since the living righteous are still commingled with the sinners in the church. So what happened at that time when they were still commingled in the sinners, with the sinners in the church? Jesus Christ pleaded with God the Father to hold the four winds. Brothers and sisters, to hold the four winds. So, when God the Father granted his pleading, then Jesus Christ commanded the angel to tell the four angels to hold the four winds. And he is waving something up and down in his hand. That is the names that had been left written in the Lamb's Book of Life. And they need to have that seal of protection. So let us go back again to track number 3, page 49. It says, yet since the living righteous are still commingled with the sinners in the church, and since Daniel saw the Ancient of Days sit in judgment, it says, and since Daniel saw the Ancient of Days sit in judgment. What judgment? Brothers and sisters, when the Ancient of Days did sit, then it says, not to slay those who had the mark. So when God the Father sit in judgment, the 144,000 living saints are already marked. Where? On earth? No, in heaven. Why is it that there is a statement not to slay those who had the mark? Because Jesus Christ pleaded to God the Father. In the vision of Sister White, it says, he saw already the 4 angels having the slaughter weapons in their hands. They were about to slay. And Sister White also saw in her vision that the 4 angels is about to let loose the four winds. But at that time, the 144,000 are not yet sealed. But in the heavenly sanctuary, they were already marked. Because their names had been left written in the Lamb's book of life. It says, not to slay those who had the mark, but to judge from the books which were opened. Obviously, his vision of the judgment is in respect to the dead. So here the voice of inspiration is plainly telling you and I that occurrence when Jesus Christ is pleading to God the Father, the proceedings in the most holy place is in respect to the dead. And that is why in 2SR, or in other words, the blotting out of sins that pertains to the dead at that time is not yet finished. So here in 2SR page 171, it says, therefore John's vision of the 144,000 as they stood on Mount Zion with the lamp. If the statement, the 144,000 stood on Mount Zion with the lamp, that occurrence is in heaven. But if the statement says, the lamp stood on Mount Zion with the 144,000, that occurrence is on earth. Now, for example, I would like to read to you track number 15. Track number 15 on page. Track number 15, page 24. He says, the saints, the saints though, those who are living and those who are resurrected at the commencement of the millennium are all to live and reign 1,000 years with Christ. So, the statement with Christ, meaning that is in heaven. Not Christ with them. So, if the statement Christ with them, then that is on earth, according to this reading. Track number 15, page 24. So, this statement, it is in heaven because the 144,000, therefore John's vision of the 144,000 as they stood on Mount Zion with the lamp. So, of course, the lamp, Jesus Christ is in heaven. It says, is an incident after this special company of saints had been sealed. But where is the sealing? Heavenly sanctuary. Because it says, and sometime before the close of provision, then it says, the sealing of the 144,000 is at the closing of the judgment of the dead. You see, brothers and sisters, the sealing of the 144,000 is at the closing of the judgment of the dead. And then it says, and at the beginning of the judgment of the living. So the only way that you could understand this statement, brothers and sisters, is to separate distinctly the judgment that takes place on earth and the judgment that takes place on heaven. Now let us illustrate. So, during the sealing of the 144,000, sealing of the 144,000. During the sealing of the 144,000 on earth, it says, in heaven, that is already the closing of the judgment of the dead. According to 2SR 171. But in track number 349 and 50, at that time, the 144,000 are already marked. But where is the marking? Heavenly sanctuary. Not yet on earth, because in the vision of Sister White, at that time, the 144,000 were not yet sealed. And that is why Jesus Christ pleaded to God the Father. And track number 3, page 49 and 50, very clear. At the time when the 144,000, the living righteous, are marked, the judgment in the heavenly sanctuary is still the judgment that pertains to the dead. Now here's another statement that I would like to read to you in 1934, track 3. Uh, 1934 edition, on track number 3. Let's read. I think page 76. Track number 3. 1934 edition. Page 76. It says, now to prove spirit prophecy in perfect harmony. It says, now to prove that Sister White's writings are in perfect harmony with the testimonies of the prophets, we quote from the Great Controversy, page 425, showing that the purification of the church took place while the investigative judgment of the dead was going on, and just before the commencement of the loud cry of the third angel's message, the harvest. While the investigative judgment is going forward in heaven, while the sins of penitent believers are being removed from the sanctuary, there is to be a special work of purification, of putting away of sin among God's people upon earth. Then the church which our Lord at His coming, that is Christ's invisible coming, is to receive to Himself, will be a glorious church, not having spot or wrinkle or any such thing. Then she will look forth as the morning, fair as the moon, clear as the sun, and terrible as an army with banners. She is to go forth into all the world, conquering and to conquer. Prophets and Kings, page 725. The purification of the church mentioned here takes place in the heavenly sanctuary, although it also takes place on the earth, on the triumphant church. the last ordained ministry. But the focal point is the purification that takes place in the heavenly sanctuary. Because the statement, it says, showing that the purification of the church took place while the investigative judgment of the dead was going on. But what investigative judgment of the dead? It says, while the sins of penitent believers are being removed from the sanctuary. Therefore, that is blotting out of sins. There are only two proceedings in the most holy place. Blotting out of sins, it is called the beginning work of the judgment of the dead. And then, inscribing their names into the book of resurrection, it is called the granting of rewards. And it is called the closing work of the judgment of the dead. That is very plain in track number 2SR rather. 2SR page 189. It says 2SR 189. During Christ's ministration in the holiest of all, which is a throne of judgment, of blotting out of sins and granting of rewards. Blotting out of sins is called the beginning work of the judgment of the dead. But granting of rewards, closing work of the judgment of the dead. So, I would like to show to you now the statements that we read so that we could understand. So, according to the shepherd's rod, brothers and sisters, I would like to put a date. April 1, 2020. In Greek Bible calendar, that is October 10, 2021. Now, from this time, I would like to holy place. Then, here, most holy place. Most holy place. During the judgment for the living in the holy place, that is the proceeding whose names to be blotted out and whose names to be retained on this coming Day of Atonement, March 27, 2021 or October 10, 2022. So the statement given in the shepherd's rod that during the purification of the church, which is the blotting out of names, in the holy place, the proceedings in the most holy place is judgment of the dead, blotting out of sins. So, blotting out of sins. So, March 27, 2021 or October 10, 2022, in the most holy place, that is blotting out of sins. The last blotting out of sins that pertains to the dead. But from March 27, 2021 to September 27, 2021, this is the period of the sealing of the 144,000. Seal as individual. The proceedings in the most holy place at that time is closing work. Closing work, not blotting out of names, granting of rewards, or inscribing their names in the book of resurrection. Inscribing their names in the book of resurrection. That is the proceedings, brothers and sisters, most holy place, as well as on the earthly sanctuary. So, we will continue that subject, brothers and sisters, and let us have a clear conception concerning the great white throne and the thrones in the sanctuary. Great white throne, brothers and sisters, is located in the palace grounds, not in the sanctuary grounds. And in the great white throne, there is no beast and there is no elders, according to the shepherd's rod. So, we need to have a clear conception of all the proceedings in the heavenly sanctuary. And it is revealed in the book of Revelation, according to tract 15, page 13, that God showed to John the entire proceedings in the heavenly sanctuary from start to finish. And since that occurrence in Revelation 14, verse 2 and 3, when the heavenly beings are singing before the throne, before the four beasts, and before the 24 elders, it could not be the great white throne. Although we already read in Revelation 20 verse 4, it is pertaining to the lesser thrones. Although that lesser thrones during 1,000 years, it says that jointly together with the great white throne, it will, those being that sitting on that lesser thrones, and we will show to you who are they sitting on that lesser thrones on our next episode. So thank you very much, brethren, for listening and viewing this program. May the good Lord bless you and have a beautiful, wonderful evening.